Today, I'm breaking down my preseason 2026 running back tiers, RB1 to RB61, going through 9 separate tiers and talking about all the values, sleepers, and everything else to get you a scholar ready for your fantasy football draft. So, going to kick things off, obviously, at the top tier 1, guys. The first 2 picks in all likelihood of your fantasy football draft. So, we got Jahmyr Gibbs as my RB1, Bijan Robinson as my RB2. So, I'm not going to pretend like Gibbs needs to be your 101. I'm not going to call you crazy if you want to take Bijan. As we saw last year down the stretch in the fantasy playoffs, Bijan was able to outperform Jahmyr Gibbs, even though even at that point in the season, we certainly would have higher expectations for the Lions scoring offense. But it is that latter tiebreaker that has me going Gibbs over Bijan this year because, look, 2 incredible running backs. They're both in the middle of their prime. And without David Montgomery in Detroit anymore, we no longer have to even worry about Bijan having, a different stratosphere of potential volume than Gibbs as the running back y'all in Detroit now. So it really, again, is just that scoring upside for me. We can actually look at what Vegas thinks about every single offense in the NFL by taking their game-by-game game totals from all the over-unders and basically adding those up throughout the season. And as it stands right now, the Detroit Lions, Vegas is number 1 preseason implied scoring offense. Meanwhile, the Falcons tied for 24th with the Steelers. So again, it's not you, Bijan. It's just your Tua Tagovailoa, Michael Penix-led offense. Give me Gibbs over Bijan. But again, Bijan's still my RB2. Can't go too wrong there. Tier 2, everyone. The NFL's best fantasy football running back of all time. One-man tier, and it really is just Christian McCaffrey, who last season, guys, helped, I don't want to say break fantasy football. There are a lot of really good players, but hey, CMC, number 1 in career PPR points per game at the position and fresh off another awesome year where the receiving was really just got him over that finish line. Consider this, okay? Last year, pure just receiving. If Christian McCaffrey did not have a single rush attempt, he still would have scored more PPR points than Saquon Barkley had as a whole on the season. So that really is the cheat code when we are trying to go through full PPR ranks and scoring. Guys like CMC just have such a problem with coming anywhere close to being a bust in fantasy land because, again, getting a full freaking point per reception, I don't even think it backs up kind of what we're going for in fantasy football, which is replicating real life success in the scoring. But you know what? It's the game we play, so we got to embrace it. I love CMC. You love CMC. The question is, should we still love CMC coming off a season where he had, I believe, 450 freaking touches out there? I ran some numbers, guys. I looked at actually about 30 instances from 2015 and 24 of a running back having at least 350 plus touches in the regular season and postseason. So we're always going to be throwing around a relatively arbitrary number here. I use 350 because, again, that gave me 30 instances over the course of the last 10 years. I feel like that's kind of what we're looking for, right? Outlier sort of seasons, top 3 running backs per year, highest touches, and going from there. So the results from this, average games played the following season after one of these big workloads, 13.3, median was 16. So he didn't actually see a ton of running backs just instantly get super injured. Yes, you got the 2016 David Johnson breaking his wrist, unfortunately, in week 1 and everything. But generally, guys, 12 of the last 13 qualifiers played at least 13 games in the next season. The really big drop-off I saw was actually more so in the yards per carry department, which, again, because of CMC's receiving upside, arguably is kind of the least consequential factor, I should say. So average yards per carry went from 4.7 to 4.1 overall. The PPR points per game went down in general, and that's one of these things I always see people shout out. It's like, well, all these running backs coming off the big season, almost all of them average fewer PPR points, which it's true, but the overall average was still 16.6, which would be like a top 7 mark, okay? So when you're getting this many touches, you're usually having a semi-historical season in the first place. It's not all that surprising that we're seeing a relative drop-off in fantasy points. Just realize that the relative drop-off doesn't necessarily mean that we're looking at a bad season or anything. So all that to say, guys, I do believe these large workload seasons, more of a case-by-case basis. I've seen some of the studies, actually use Zeke as a suspension, using Le'Veon Bell's holdout year. Like, you can kind of make the numbers tell whatever story your biased agenda is trying to do. And hey, maybe that's what I'm doing right now by saying that I'm not afraid of CMC in the year 2026. But again, more than anything for me, comes down to that receiving upside. It's just unlike anything we've ever seen. You do not need more than one hand to count the number of players you should be drafting ahead of CMC in fantasy drafts. So I will go Gibbs and Bijan in running back land. Probably taking Jamar Chase and Puka Nacua as well. But for me, CMC at number 5 overall player ahead of 2026. Let's get into tier 3, a little bit of a longer one, but I called this tier choose your baller RB1 fighter because these guys are all awesome, but also as we're seeing in early drafts, they really are going one after another. So it's important that we try to figure out who are the haves and who could be the have-nots in this, again, loaded tier. So RB4 overall on the top of the tier is going to be Jonathan Taylor for me. Look, first freaking 10 weeks of last season, healthy Daniel Jones. This dude was looking like an absolute world beater, 27 PPR points per game. However, Daniel Jones got hurt. We had a literal grandpa come under center, just 12.6 PPR points per game. That's RB23 status in weeks 12 through 18 for Jonathan Taylor. So again, kind of saw the two faces of the Jonathan Taylor experience. There's been some other good stats out there about how much less effective he is when his team is not able to play with the leading game script. But at the same time, guys, JT isn't all that dissimilar from Christian McCaffrey when it comes to just like, if they're healthy, they're going to ball out and put up league-breaking numbers. And we basically only saw that from JT last year, which, again, incredible season overall, even with the second half drop-off. And then back in 2021 when he led the league in rushing, 20 freaking touchdowns, the only 2 full seasons this dude's been able to stay healthy. My RB4, especially because, guys, we did see him actually average a newfound career high in receiving points per game. The Colts have been more so willing in recent years, I should say, to actually leave JT out there on the field for nearly every single snap. To me, that, again, receiving presence gives them a little bit of a better floor than maybe we saw in some of these past years. RB5 for me, Mr. Saquon Barkley, guys, because here's the thing, all right? 2024, a lot of fantasy nerds and idiot losers like myself were crying, oh my gosh, Jalen Hurts at the goal line, and oh, they're not going to be throwing the ball to Saquon Barkley. Why would we be taking this guy so high? And he proceeds to have one of the greatest running back seasons that we have ever seen. Mr. 2K, everything great he did on the way the Eagles win that Super Bowl. And then 2025, all those kind of concerns that we were crying about in 2024 sort of came to fruition, okay? Saquon was so reliant on the long touchdown runs in 2024. We didn't get as many last year. Saquon a little bit banged up, and as was the offensive line, so I'm not saying he magically became more of an average running back, but hey, didn't get a ton of work at the goal line as we expected with Jalen Hurts, and just with the offense not exactly humming the same way, it wasn't a great year to be in the Saquon Barkley business, but you know what? I'm buying redemption being spelled Saquon here in 2026, guys. I do think, again, maybe we're just looking a little bit too closely at factors that, yes, matter, but at the end of the day, this time last year, I think Saquon was most people's pick for the best freaking running back on the planet, and now we can get him in the early parts of round 2, something my annoying dachshunds are very, very excited about in the background. So again, Saquon Barkley, guys, for me, it's not just an investment in him, it's an investment in an Eagles scheme and an overall offense, just taking a step forward, okay? And I know whenever we have any of these, new play callers who haven't actually called plays in July, we're always speaking glowingly about them. But again, the Kevin Patullo experience last year, Birds fans know, really, really nowhere to go but up for this Eagles offense. So I'm excited about buying back in on Saquon Barkley. He is my RB5 ahead of 2026. One spot ahead of Bills RB James Cook, where honestly, I see some similarities from 2024 or 2025 Saquon to maybe 2025, 2026 James Cook. A lot of big, long touchdown runs. We do still have Josh Allen at the goal line, and we just don't know about that receiving upside in this offense. That said, Pete Carmichael now in town helping out Joe Brady in this Bills offense. Obviously, Carmichael did so many great things with the Sean Payton Saints offenses over the years. So maybe, just maybe, we actually see James Cook get back into more of that 2023 receiving workload with all the goodness he's been supplying on the ground as well over the course of these past 2 sort of breakout seasons for James Cook. So for me, tough to lower him too much in the ranks. This Bills offense also just over the course of the past, 6 years, ever since Josh Allen became Josh Allen really in 2020, they've been the league's just, again, masterclass in terms of consistently being this top 5 scoring offense. So very, very tough to poke too many big holes in James Cook profile. And again, God forbid he starts getting the opportunity to catch 50, 60 passes in the season. I would not be surprised if he actually cracks his way into the position's top 3. RB7 on this list is going to be Mr. Ashton Genty. So it wasn't the best rookie season. I know some people are going to throw out the overall total numbers because Genty didn't miss any time last year. I think he ended up finishing as like the RB11 in total points per game. But anyone that was actually playing this dude knows just how rough it was. We got the Bears explosion early on this season. And then it was like 2 straight months of pretty much dirt average performance to the point that we were ranking this dude as an RB3 before he predictably goes for like over 200 yards, has 2 long touchdowns against one of the best defenses in the league and the Houston Texans right when we were actually able to, feel decent about benching this guy. So pretty much how fantasy football works in a nutshell right there. But again, amidst all that, horrific offensive environment, offensive line coached by Pete Carroll's kid. That was not going well. We all know it didn't go well. Also had Chip Kelly get fired before the end of November. Geno Smith leading the league in interceptions and sacks. Like, this was rather easily the worst offensive environment in the league last year. But if we just sort of look at the plays where Genty got a little bit of help, which you would like to think could be on the table a little bit more, Clint Kubiak, Tyler Lindenbaum helping out with some of those things. When Ashton Genty got 1 yard before contact last season, he was the RB1 in tackles avoided per touch, and he was the RB3 in yards after contact per carry. Like, he looked the part of the freak that he was coming out of Boise State, the alleged generational prospect. He did look like that when we just give him the benefit of the doubt of having a little bit of rushing room. Now, not expecting the 2026 Raiders to be lighting up scoreboards every week. It's likely we get Kirk Cousins earlier in the season. Who knows if Fernando Mendoza is going to be ready to be, a big-time baller like he was drafted to be in the year 2026. But Genty, big time receiving upside. This dude could catch 50, 60 passes. We're not expecting him to leave the field, and he's got the big play ability. I cannot go any lower than RB7. I do have some notes about how running backs perform on really bad scoring offenses here shortly. I'm going to get to Devon Achane, but he will not be my RB7 in this list. More on that shortly. So, RBA for me, Kenneth Walker, reigning Super Bowl MVP. Shout out to K9 for having one hell of a playoff stretch. And now he's in a Chiefs offense that needs him to be that dude, all right? Looking at the course of these past, 4 seasons, 2022, 2025, the Chiefs have been trying to get a run game going, but really ever since they had prime young Kareem Hunt, they just haven't been able to do so. Shout out to Damian Williams and some of the other dudes who briefly did some good things. But since 2022, guys, Chiefs running backs as a whole, dead last in terms of explosive rush rate and also tackles avoided per carry. During the same time span, Kenneth Walker, second in tackles avoided per carry, 11th in explosive rush rate. So really does give this offense everything they've been wanting for in the position. Patrick Mahomes coming back from the ACL. I think it would make sense if they want to lean on that run game a little bit more, particularly in the early portions of the season. Now, the argument against would be Kenneth Walker has had some injuries, and maybe, just maybe, when you try to give him that full role, he's not going to be as effective. It could be a 50% three-point shooter on 4 attempts per game. Maybe not the same guy with 8 or 10 attempts per game, but man, even if this recent addition of the Chiefs offense has been more above average as opposed to the world beaters that we saw recently, I just think the volume, the overall talent, and honestly the ability to catch 50 plus passes for Kenneth Walker is something that I know hasn't been regularly thrown at him, but when he's been asked to be a receiver, he's been pretty good at it. I'm trying not to overthink this one too much. RB8 for me, right smack dab in the middle of this tier. RB9, Omarion Hampton, someone who's been a little bit controversial. Everyone loves in July to be like, oh, the worst pick in every round. Like, we have such a great track record of trying to predict this crazy sport, months and months in advance, but it's our job. We're trying. I get it. Anyway, I've just seen a lot of kind of hate, I guess, for Hampton because of the idea where it's like, yeah, maybe Keaton Mitchell, who Mike McDaniel put wanted posters up in their GM's office for, and maybe Kamani Vidal, they actually turns into more of a 3-headed thing. But I don't know, guys. They used the first-round pick on Hampton. He was clearly the lead running back before he had the unfortunate fractured ankle, and he looked really freaking good before that injury as well. 4.8 yards per carry before that fractured ankle, just 4 after. His yards after contact and tackles avoided numbers were absolutely elite before the injury. Again, fell off down the stretch. Also, in part because of Joe Alt and the offensive line getting injured. I just feel like all the excuses, warranted excuses, that we have for Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey, we kind of only use them for those guys. And then Quentin Johnson or Marion Hampton get left out to dry a little bit in these online debates that maybe I'm paying too close of attention to. But regardless, Marion Hampton for me is someone that I don't want to be underweight on throughout this year. In fact, I would like to probably start drafting him more because, again, if you guys have been listening to me at all this offseason, thank you, first of all. But my biggest just overall bet I'm making is this Chargers offense being awesome. I believe in Mike McDaniel, Justin Herbert, a healthy group on this offensive line. And hey, some of the issues people have with the passing game is the thought process that Mike McDaniel and Jim Harbaugh might want to run the ball more. If you're in that pool, you should definitely be drafting a lot of Omarion Hampton. RB10 for me, Chase Brown. Earlier in the season, I had him ranked as overall RB4. I've lowered him because I'm soft. But man, maybe I should get him back up there again. Either way, top 12 running back for me. He's been the RB11 in PPR points per game during the course of these past 2 seasons. Should clear 300 touches with good health inside an offense that it wouldn't surprise any of us if it ranks number 1 in scoring by the end of the year. The only real problem with Chase Brown is like every running back we talked about so far, I think we would all agree is better at real life football. And accordingly, we have seen some cracks in the profile with rather mediocre veterans over these past two seasons. Obviously, in 2024, it took the Zach Moss injury for Chase Brown to kind of boom in the first place. And last year, there were some not so great splits with and without Samaje Perine as well. So I don't actually think 31-year-old Samaje is going to be this big threat to Chase Brown this next season. And I do think those splits are also probably more so impacted by the Jake Browning disaster class we had early on last season before Joe Flacco and then Burrow kind of got the offense grooving again. But really is one of those things where we all kind of agree running back is the most dependent position on the rest of the offensive environment and pieces around there. So if we love all that and we're okay with the volume, why shouldn't we be in on Chase Brown? My RB10, I do get a little scared drafting him literally at the round 1-2 turn over, the Nico Collins and the Drake Londons and the Brock Bowers of the world. But in terms of running back standing, really tough to, again, get him down too much lower than RB10 to RB12 range. RB11 for me, though, Mr. Derrick Henry, the great one, 4-touchdown masterclass in week 17. Probably helped a lot of you guys win those fantasy championships last year. And it was just another great season in what's honestly been a career full of them. If King Henry can somehow, guys, piece together, and it's asking a lot for a dude that's, well north of 30 at this point. So, just keep doing this for another 4 or 5 years. But if he does, that Emmitt Smith all-time rushing record really does become clear and actually possible. Something that, again, after Adrian Peterson retired, I just didn't even know if we were going to be ever having that be a possibility here. But anyway, Derrick Henry, I was watching him throughout last year, and one of the first things I wanted to check in this offseason was like, well, his numbers dropped off a decent bit from 2024, right? And the answer is yes, they did. And he was still like top 10 in everything. So like 5.9 yards per carry to 5.2. Some of the other stuff, again, just tackles avoided, explosive run rate, all that. They dropped off relatively to him, but they were also still relative to the rest of the league, really, really freaking good. So the issue is, again, the age, because over the course of the past decade, we've only seen 4 seasons of a running back at the age of 30 score even 15 PPR points per game. Derrick Henry is responsible for 2 of them. 2019, Mark Ingram got another, and then that 2023 Raheem Mostert fever dream was the 4th one there. So kind of a Lamar Jackson stat there with the gravity he brings in the read option game. King Henry, again, someone where, no, I'm probably not trying to leave every single draft because I am trying to give the, age cliff gods at least some benefit of the doubt here with all the history we have. But there's some survivorship bias in that as well, guys. Like, I think when I looked earlier this offseason, there were only 4 running backs across the entire league, like not even starters, just across the entire league that were going to be 29 years old this year. So when we do see some of these numbers like, only so many running backs age 30 managed to do this, not many running backs are able to still be in the league at age 30 anyway. So it's a decent chance the ones that are able to buck that trend in the first place, probably pretty good at ball in their own right. So Derrick Henry for me, my RB11 head 2026. Last running back in this tier. I told you guys it's a long one, all right? This is basically, the longest tier I have until we get into some of the RB4 handcuffs. But it is going to be Miami Dolphins RB Devon Achane, fresh off a top 5 season, the all-time leader in yards per carry in the Super Bowl era, if you finagle with that threshold enough. But look, second in PPR points per game from receiving at the position since 2024. You love Achane. I love Achane. We hate the freaking offense, guys. And that really is all this bet is on. Explosive pass catching skill set. Hey, maybe he just keeps on keeping on. And the big kind of, I guess, pro Achane argument is, hey, this Dolphins offense wasn't any good last year. We don't expect him to be good this year. Like, why the difference of opinion with Achane? It just comes down to the receiving upside, okay? Malik Willis over the course of these past 2 seasons has been the highest scrambler in terms of just how many times he's taken off per dropback. Tua, I think in a sample of 61 quarterbacks, ranked 56. So that's more so the issue. Being bad with Tua still means, he's checking the ball down to Achane all the time. Also had a bunch of design looks from Mike McDaniel. Not exactly a guarantee we're going to get the same thing from Bobby Slowick this year. A bad offense to Malik Willis could mean him, again, just taking off and running and not throwing the ball to Achane enough, and then we're not getting as many scoring opportunities as well. Again, it's just not quite as simple as saying they were bad last year, they're bad this year. What's the difference? So anyway, though, I promised you before, I did do a study on actually looking at running backs in bad scoring offenses, specifically last 10 years, all right? There's only been 14 total running backs post top 12 fantasy numbers on a per game basis while operating in a bottom 10 scoring offense. So basically 11.7% of the top scoring RB1s over the course of the past decade came from really bad offensive environments. And overall, looking at the different positions, only quarterback was actually kind of more correlated, or I should say less correlated kind of with this, factor going on. So in general, quarterbacks and running backs far more dependent to have high-end fantasy success on being in really good real life offenses as well, which I do think makes sense. All right. When you're getting down in the game and stuff, you're obviously throwing the ball. Wide receivers and tight ends still have possibilities of, making up for lack of touchdowns with just that sweet, sweet volume. Many of it in the, comeback mode sort of manner. Shout out Michael Wilson, 2024, Brian Thomas, guys of that nature. That said, and this is why I'm not completely out on Achane. Honestly, guys, as the ADP continues to go down, love saying it. Don't hate the player, hate the ADP. Devon Achane as a later mid to late second round pick, I can get behind that. It's just more so when we're kind of talking about him next to guys like a Chase Brown, like a James Cook, like a Saquon Barkley, where we love the talent too, but we also like their offenses a lot more. So anyway, guys, looking at the 14 running backs who did actually manage to put up big time numbers in bad offenses, here's the list. All right. 2016, Jordan Howard and Carlos Hyde. 2018, David Johnson and Leonard Fournette. Lenny did it again in 2019. 2020, James Robinson. What a time to be alive. 2021, DeAndre Swift. 2022, Derrick Henry. Leonard Fournette again. 2023, Saquon Barkley and Breece Hall. 2024, Alvin Kamara. And then 2025, Devon Achane. There he is, and Bijan Robinson. I don't know about you, but when I first kind of put this list together, my first instinct was like, oh, that's a lot of guys that seem to be catching passes, at least in recent history. And sure enough, guys, like other than Derrick Henry on that 2022 Titans squad, we have seen a ton of these dudes catch a lot of passes. And that's been the way for them to kind of break out of these bad offensive situations. So again, group of backs as a whole, 52 reception average, median 50 during these productive seasons since 2018. Derrick Henry is the only qualifier to catch under 40 passes here. So I honestly, after I did the study, warmed up a little bit to Devon Achane and Ashton Genty because that's the allure for them. It's not their scoring upside necessarily. We know they can break the big runs, though, which is nice. It is the opportunity for them to catch 50, 60, 70 passes. And in Genty's case, man, catching balls from, 38-year-old Kirk Cousins, and then even Fernando Mendoza with a wide receiver room that nobody cares about. Really high upside for Genty. And Achane, too, someone I don't want to completely write off. So it's just, again, if he wasn't next to Henry on the Ravens, Brown on the Bengals, Hampton on the Chargers, just offenses that I could see all being ranked in the top 5 at the end of the year, maybe I could warm up even more on Achane. For right now, for me, RB12, back half the second round pick, great value at that point. Let's move on now to tier 4. These are sometimes boring veterans, but, kind of pay the bills in fantasy land. And then also Jeremiah Love. So always fun. We can get, again, a full clean tier here of just completely like-minded guys, but a little bit tough to do that on occasion. So RB13 for me, Javonte Williams. He's the lead back of an offense that we freaking love. He's going to be featured almost every single down after the Cowboys doubled down and extended him. And he just finished as the RB12 in PPR points per game. So real nice value with him going a lot of times more so later parts of round 3. I could see even more of a round 4 ADP in certain home leagues. So Javonte Williams just feels like, it's someone that we kind of wrote off as a fantasy community after he couldn't get things going in Denver. But new year, new Javonte, still the same, just again, lackluster depth chart. Really isn't too much of a difference for me between Chase Brown and Javonte Williams. Yeah, Chase Brown, a little bit more receiving upside, I would say. But Cowboys, when you do look at what they have in terms of the high scoring potential and being a little bit more willing to run the ball than I think Cincy, again, nice discount on Javonte Williams. I've been happy to buy really throughout this offseason. RB14, Breece Hall for me. Has an RB6 finished to his name back in 2023. My guy Theo over at RotoWire is a big Breece Hall fan in round 3. I just struggle a little bit. Again, league's reigning 31st ranked scoring offense. Just went through the study, talked about how Genty and Achane should be able to overcome this if they have the receiving workload. And that is something we like with Breece Hall. So again, he's my RB14. I'm not completely down on the guy. It's just been a tough click for me, admittedly. But you know what, guys? I don't make the right click every single round, every single year. Maybe this is the year I get it all figured out and win every single league. But just for me, haven't been going out of my way for Breece Hall. Could certainly be wrong on it. Just a little worried about, again, this overall offensive environment. So I will say with Achane and Willis, like this seems like a team they're going to try to be figuring it out throughout the year. And then with Genty, you'd like to think they could have a kind of Saints-esque season where Tyler Shuck, in this case, Fernando Mendoza. They come in for the second half. You start building some momentum for next year. Like, you're still trying to do good things at the end of the year. I just worry with the Jets and then our next running back, the Cardinals, RB15, Jeremiah Love. I like the running back talents. I really do. With Geno and Jacoby, you can talk yourself into them being more of an average, below average offense as opposed to just complete bottom five dog water. I just worry when it's week 12, these teams are 2-10, and then all of a sudden we have Carson Beck and Cade Klubnik under center. And then what are we going to do? It's going to be a freaking 13.5 team total going into the weekend, just praying, I should say, for some garbage time points here. So that's been my concerns with Breece Hall and Jeremiah Love. Two very good running backs, especially Love guys. Like, I think this dude receiving wise could really surprise. I mean, I know at Notre Dame he didn't get 50, 60 catches out there, but Raleigh Leonard, CJ Carr, two guys that move around a lot, especially Leonard running the football. But Carr's kind of got that improvisational tool in his skill set as well. And just, they didn't need to throw these guys a lot, but when they did, particularly Jeremiah Love, again, Texas A&M game, Miami game earlier in the year, like, they actually lined him up in the slot. He was looking explosive in and out of some of those cuts, had the one-handed snag against the Aggies as well. Like, super, super gifted receiving running back. But man, the way Breece Hall and Jeremiah Love just crush it, and they make me look stupid for ranking them RB 14 and 15. I think they just need to be out there in a Christian McCaffrey legit 90% plus snap roll, and then they just go ahead and make it happen. Is that going to be the case? I don't really think so. I'm not going to freak out because Braylon Allen weighs 250 pounds. Maybe we'll get another. You guys remember the swing pass? Just practice, and like, it drove his ADP up because no one covered Braylon Allen, and we watched him run 40 yards in practice. That was the thing that happened last year. I do think, though, it could be 70, 20-10 in favor of Breece. Maybe not enough in that offense. And then Jeremiah Love, man, with Tyler Algier, James Conner, Trey Benson. I wouldn't be surprised if Conner's playing football somewhere else by week 1. But again, there's enough potential problems there on a team that could also want to not exactly hand their rookie running back 400 touches from day one. Enough concerns for me to not be going too overboard with these guys. RB16, Kyren Williams, fresh off an RB11 season in PPR points per game. And that was despite Blake Corum really starting to eat into this workload, guys. So in 2025, just 17.4 touches per game for Kyren. He had 21.7 in 2023 and 21.9 in 2024. So he was previously just getting a massive workhorse role that was really on par with guys like Christian McCaffrey at the top of the league. Didn't get it last year, but accordingly, we saw his efficiency improve really to kind of like year 2 levels back when it was really good. And also, you don't need 25 touches per game when you're in the Rams high-flying scoring offense that can give you all sorts of goal line opportunities, no matter how many times you keep fumbling the ball. So Kyren Williams, very, very safe, solid pick at the RB16 mark. And hey, Blake Corum, someone who's also had a few problems here in and out of the Sean McVay, doghouse. Who's to say this 60-40, 55-45 split persists if we do see the Rams go ahead and just put more back on the plate of Kyren because they trust him more than anyone? All of a sudden, this RB16 price tag will look very, very affordable. So big thing for me here, though, and this is the reason why I pushed back a little bit with the kind of idea this summer of like, oh, everyone needs to be drafting RBs early. Make sure you leave your first, 2 rounds, both with RBs. If you can find a way to get these wide receiver ones, who the other argument for that would be the wide receiver ones are more valuable than ever because of kind of the dearth or the death. I think it's dearth. My bad if not, of the wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s in fantasy. So if I'm able to, be picking, let's say I'm blessed and I get the 101 or 102, I get a Gibbs or a Bijan. Rounds 2 and 3 come around. Maybe Brock Bowers falls to me. Probably not. You can imagine. Maybe I get like Nico Collins and Drake London or something. Round 4, round 5, if we do in home leagues get a chance to get your Kyren Williams, your Josh Jacobs going that late, like there is a pocket of dudes in that kind of hero 0 RB subset that I do think really could help you out. So more applicable example would probably be actually if we're picking more so around 11, 12, that's when we actually wind up getting, 2 wide receivers in our first 2 picks. And then Kyren becomes our hero RB in round 3, a little bit more likely scenario there. But either way, again, the fact that Kyren Williams is going RB 16, I don't feel like it's super controversial. I do think there's just, again, a kind of bigger pot of these running backs where we actually have decent touch ceilings and good offenses. So also applies to Josh Jacobs, my RB 17. If we had 0 issues with the off the field stuff, I would move Josh Jacobs to the front of this tier as an ode to this Packers offense. Josh Jacobs' talent himself. I know some people balked at that a little bit, said he looked washed last year. At the very, very end of the season, when his injury, breakdown was looking like a laundry list at that point, okay, fine. But man, watch him in that Broncos game, just even beforehand, incredibly talented rusher of the football behind an offensive line that no one's exactly, writing songs about in the first place as well. So I trust Josh Jacobs, 30 touchdowns in 32 regular season games since taking his talents to Lambeau in the first place. I trust the Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love partnership. Really, really tough to be too concerned about a guy. Again, easily looking at 300 plus touches with the benefit of help from the injury gods and also his legal issues. So that was my tier 4. Tier 5, guys, there's upside. I get it. We're still talking about, top 24 running backs here, but I do have some questions, okay? So RB18 is going to be Travis Etienne. 48 million reasons to get fed the football down there by the bayou. Travis Achan, one of you guys told me you wouldn't watch my videos if I don't say Achan. So hopefully he didn't leave. Travis Achan, Etienne, whatever you want to call the guy. I just get some dead zone vibes here. And this is why Etienne, I have him ranked a little bit lower than what we're seeing, in the ADP streets, because Alvin Kamara, he's not leaving. He wants to play football. If Alvin Kamara is completely out of the picture, I would move Etienne up. I put him right there next to kind of Breece Hall and Jeremiah Love. I think with the whole offense to himself, that's the same sort of profile, all right? And maybe the Saints do take a step forward. Again, though, we have the optimism, the rose-colored glasses for everyone in July. Everyone's had a great draft. They made awesome offseason improvements. The play caller is going to be great. That's just life. And I get it. Be optimistic about your favorite team. It's all good. Vegas says the Saints, I believe, 23rd in terms of their implied scoring rank ahead of next year. It's not great. You know what I'm saying? So Etienne, if we have Kamara taking some of the pass down work, which already Kellen Moore has made a huge habit of doing with his RBs over the years, we have someone who I don't exactly consider a special talent by any stretch of the imagination. Good season last year. I just give a little bit more credit to, I think, Liam Cohen and that scheme that was going on. And then, just an offense that we're not overly thrilled about. Travis Etienne, RB18 for me. RB19, DeAndre Swift has never finished worse than RB24 since entering the NFL. And hasn't exactly posted the top 5 numbers either. But at the end of the day, guys, I think we're probably overthinking this for, again, the 5th or 6th straight year. Explosive, pass-catching, friendly running back. Now in an ascending Bears, Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams offense that we love. So I know the way Caleb just runs around back there, he's not checking the ball down as much as some other quarterbacks. But DeAndre Swift, man, someone who, again, I think perennially is a bit too disrespected in the fantasy streets. Even the one thing that I think was a reasonable critique of his game over the years, and that's success rate. One of these running backs where he has 6 straight carries that get 1 or 2 yards, 7th one he pops off for 25, and that matters, and he wasn't very good at it in 2024. Last year, though, what do you want to credit? The offensive line improvements. Ben Johnson and DeAndre Swift himself, guys, really did step things up in a major way there and posted, I believe it was top 5 numbers in success rate at the position. So good stuff from Swifty. And again, someone where if you did find yourself early on in the draft loading up on wide receivers, very, very good option, not fall too far behind in the running back streets. RB20 for me, Bashaw Tutin. I'm buying it, guys. I was not a Tutin believer in 2024, new year, or 2025, excuse me. New year, new me. And I just think that when we look at Chris Rodriguez, who, by the way, currently still recovering from that offseason foot injury, don't love that going on. Could even be a Liz Frank. I don't know. Just saying. Give me all the Bashaw Tutin, guys. We love the offense with Liam Cohen. I thought Tutin last year, you look at the tackles avoided, yards after contact, and being put in situations, too, that were constantly short yardage. I really like what I saw. We didn't get massive big plays, but again, short yardage context and it was a small sample size. Watch this dude put on some film, grab a glass of wine, and just enjoy the reality that when Bashaw Tutin gets that football, man, he really does look like he's shot out of a cannon each and every time. So I see a lot of similarities between Bashaw Tutin and kind of the ascension of one Chase Brown as well. We were worried about Zach Moss. We were worried about Samaje Perine. Meanwhile, the day 3 explosive pass-catching friendly talent managed to rise up in an offense we like, something I do see also for Bashaw Tutin. So RB20 for me, priority pick when we can get him at the end of round 5 or even in the round 6. I think we might be able to in some of these home leagues. RB21, TreVeyon Henderson. I know. It feels way too freaking high because Ramondre Stevenson's probably still going to be starting out here. Not probably. He will be starting out here. We saw what happened in the playoffs. Ramondre snatched TreVeyon's chain, but It wasn't as big of a disconnect before then as I remembered. All right. 14 healthy games together. Ramondre had 162 touches, TreVeyon 158. So it was close. Entire second half of the season, we saw the ceiling for TreVeyon, 17.6 PPR points per game, RB7 from weeks 10 through 18. I know. Ramondre missed a stretch of those games, and that's why those numbers are up there. But I just wonder if we were all a year too early. This is an offense we love. It's a guy who we know has that explosive pass catching skill set. I'm not saying he's Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think he is Jahmyr Gibbs. Not every fast running back can catch passes is Jahmyr Gibbs. But if the Patriots offense is as good as they were last year, maybe even better with A.J. Brown, Romeo Dobbs, and everything, 80% Jahmyr Gibbs could score a lot of fantasy points, guys. And remember, Gibbs was doing this too without even getting that full-time workload until the end of last year and until David Montgomery got injured down the stretch of 2024 as well. So this is not an every lineup sort of player, all right? If you did go heavy wide receivers, I don't want TreVeyon Henderson to be my first RB, but if you are in a situation where you don't love the receivers, you already got 2 running backs, there is so much upside for TreVeyon Henderson. Anyone that we have where I know it's early to buy an injury contingent running back, and that's the thing. I get it, but remove every RB1 in the league, then let's rank the RB2s in terms of where we would kind of be putting them in the ranks for like week 6 or something. TreVeyon might be RB1. Blake Corum would be up there as well. Probably those 2 guys. So again, that's the sort of sky high upside. RB21's high. If you want to move him down a few spots, wouldn't call you insane. RB21, TreVeyon Henderson. RB22, Jadarian Price. I don't want to overthink this one. He's a round 1 running back. All right. End of round 1. I get it. Not a top 5 pick, but still, Seahawks thought enough for him to use that 32 overall pick on it. No, didn't get a chance to be a full-time feature back at Notre Dame because Jeremiah freaking Love was there. But oh my God, did he do a lot of cool shit, guys. I actually made a metric called cool shit. All right. It's the amount of just explosive plays, tackles avoided, and then also touchdowns divided by running backs touches. No draft eligible running back was even closer to Jadarian Price last year. This dude is explosive. He's a menace in kick returns as well. I believe in the talent with this dude. And we're going to fade it for George Holani, for Emmanuel Wilson, because beat reporters in July said they're probably going to keep all the running backs involved. They say this every single year with every single team. What else are the coaches going to say as well? In addition to beat reporters, of course, they're going to keep everyone involved. But come on, read between the lines. First round pick. Zach Charbonnet is sidelined, potentially until late November, some of these doctors are to be believed. I don't want to overthink an explosive round 1 running back for the reigning Super Bowl champions. All right, guys. When he's going as a borderline RB2, Jadarian Price, the more and more people start overthinking this, the more and more I just want to draft this dude each and every time out. RB23, though, for me, Cam Skattebo. I'm just worried because this dude's leg has not been in one piece over the course of the past 12 months. I understand he should be out there in week 1. I understand he posted top 10 numbers last year despite not even starting until week 4, okay? He's a lot of fun to watch. That Eagles Thursday night game, what a time to be alive, okay? He's great out of the backfield and everything. They didn't make any meaningful additions to the offense under the Harbaugh, Greg Roman, Matt Nagy partnership. Still can't believe they landed on Matt Nagy, but you would like to think they're going to be running the ball a lot, and Cam Skattebo should be the focal point of that. I just get worried of guys coming back from this injury. There's going to be no one to blame but you and me and the man in the mirror, woman in the mirror, whatever. Appreciate all of you. If we're watching Skattebo in week 6 going, God, he still just doesn't look the same. From Tony Pollard to Chris Godwin to Dak Prescott to Isaiah Pacheco, like these fractured fibula plus injuries, I know when we don't have the CLs and the big knee issues, we assume everything's going to be fine, but it means something to me, guys, that Tony Pollard had a brutal injury and he comes back the following season and he admits afterwards, he's like, I didn't feel like myself until week 12 out here. I think Skattebo will play in week 1. I think he's going to be painfully inefficient. Maybe he makes it up anyway on the pass down stuff, but man, it's not like we love this Giants offense either and expecting them to be lighting up the scoreboard. So Cam Skattebo is someone I'm generally okay letting someone else draft, especially with where he's going, guys, at the end of round 4 right now. RB24, David Montgomery. And I've gone back and forth on this dude throughout the offseason. In like March, I did a way too early bull calls article. It's like Montgomery, low-end RB1 finish, double-digit touchdowns, take it to the bank. But the more I look at this dude, I just get the dead zone vibes, guys. And the dead zone running back is someone where we're just ranking as high as we are based on volume. We don't believe in the offense. We don't know if there's going to be like big playability, if like from a special caliber running back talent. We don't know if he's going to get pass down work. But look at that volume. I just don't know if we can really be expecting that more from Montgomery. All right. The Chiefs, not the Chiefs, the Texans have reshuffled their offensive line for the 20th straight year in a row, and we're hopeful for big things. Again, Vegas has them ranked 19th in preseason scoring ranks. Woody Marks isn't a huge threat, I don't think, but could it be 60-40 instead of 80-20? I think it's possible, and especially if we do see them tap more into Marks as a receiver. So I've eased off of Monty a little bit. That said, the schedule is borderline erotic, guys. And I don't want to get too into schedules right now because we are using last season numbers and we're trying to look in 2026. There's been a lot of turnover. Defense is going to get better and worse and everything. But just looking at this early, man, they get like 4 matchups in their first 7 weeks against some of the worst run defenses from last season. So they start off the year with the Bills, Bengals, Colts, Cowboys, Titans, Jaguars, and Giants through week 7. So Bengals got Dexter Lawrence now. Cowboys have made a lot of additions to their front 7. I don't think they're going to be quite as bad as they were in past years. Maybe the Bills now have a greater emphasis on stopping the run as well. But again, if you do believe in just looking at some early season schedule stuff, nobody has it better than David Montgomery. So maybe something to, drafting Montgomery, riding out the first 7 weeks. And then, when your idiot friend Billy decides he's done with Malik Neighbors, we make that switch and try to sell high before his buy. But something to keep in mind, David Montgomery, if you need just a good, decent enough floor, you've already got Josh Allen, you got 3 sweet wide receivers, and you're like, I need a running back here that maybe has a chance to be a low-end RB1. Dave Montgomery is your guy. Just not someone I'm not expecting to be sitting here in week 17 going, oh, man, if only I drafted Dave Montgomery, I would have won all my leagues. Probably famous last words. And maybe that'll be the case now that I went ahead and said it. But again, enough issues beyond just a pure volume argument for me not to be in love with Monty at this price. RB25 for me, Quinshon Judkins. Similar thing for Scadaboo, except we don't have the pass down upside. And again, like also the Giants, we have even honestly less reason to believe in the offensive environment as a whole. So Judkins, man, if you wanted to say he was the best pure runner that we saw on professional football fields last year, as a rookie, I think you would have that case. All right. So yeah, I'll take Genty overall moving forward. Fine. But Judkins looked really freaking good. I think it was him and only Kenneth Walker too had over 100 yards that were called back on penalties. So had a long house call against the Vikings, another big one against the Titans later in the year. Like Judkins, again, really, really, really freaking good with the football in his hands. And all those same excuses we make for Genty with the bad offensive line, the scheme and all that, I also think more than apply to Quinshon Judkins as well. Again, I'm just not willing to make a big bet on a guy whose leg has not been in one piece over the course of the past 12 months. And also when we do have more pass down and offensive environment concerns for Judkins. RB26, Bucky Irving, electric as a rookie. But now, guys, even if you want to just write off 2025 and say he was injured and Worst was injured and Baker was injured and everyone was injured in Tampa Bay last year, I shouldn't be laughing. It's just unfortunate how literally everyone was freaking injured out there. Even if you want to write that off, I just think we look now at the 2026 depth chart, and it sure seems to me like it's going to be a dreaded between the 20s role for this dude. All right. We have Kenneth Gainwell, reigning Steelers team MVP, Kenneth Gainwell to all you people, just caught 70 passes. And then Sean Tucker on the goal line. Last season, Sean Tucker had 9 carries inside the 5-yard line. Bucky Irving had 0. So again, it's pretty freaking tough to put up big time fantasy numbers if you're not getting goal line touches and if you're not getting the targets. That does seem like it's potentially on the plate for Bucky Irving. So maybe I'm just a hater. I will say that sort of between the 20s potential issue. You can also make that case for Bashaw Tootin. You could also make that case for Jadarian Price and some of the other guys there. It's just been weird with Bucky Irving, guys. Even last year, like just some of the reports about, some of the mental health stuff going on, just when was he going to return? The Todd Bowles comments about, hopefully later in the summer or the fall. I think Bucky's going to be out there in week 1. I'm not too concerned about the shoulder injury, but just bad vibes, right? I go on the Pat Mayo show, talk to him and Jake Seeley, once or twice a week. Make sure you guys check that out. But we just started calling him Bad Vibes Bucky. I don't know what it is. I hope we're calling him Good Vibes Bucky by halfway through the season. Not a bet I'm in the habit of making, though, this year. That said, guys, a couple bets I have been making in our next tier. All right. Tier 6 running back, 0 RB heroes who are cheap for a good reason. So, probably going to go through these ones a little bit more quickly and talk about them more in groups because that's kind of the point we're at now. Okay, guys. If your name has already been called, that's because you are a clear number one running back on your team for the most part. I know we talked about TreVeyon Henderson. So, now we're kind of talking about situations, but that's important because these guys are as cheap as they are because it's a relatively muddled situation. And no, we shouldn't run away from that in fantasy land. We should try to figure it out, try to find this year's Javonte Williams and guys of that nature. So starting things off, RB27 Jalen Warren and RB28 Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle is one of my most drafted running backs this year because I just think it's going to be close to 50-50. I love Jalen Warren, all right? Pull up any advanced metric you want. He's Gen Z, Austin Eckler, awesome as a receiver, great as a rusher. I don't know if Mike McCarthy realizes or cares about that. I think Mike McCarthy says, there's my guy, Rico Dowdle. The running back coach says, there's my guy, Rico Dowdle. Oh, hey, Jalen, good to meet you, man. We got our guy, though. We got Rico Dowdle. Maybe I'm wrong, and it's 70-30 Jalen Warren. He gets all the pass down work from 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Steelers running backs had the second most targets in the league last year. There's a scenario where it's just the Jalen Warren show, and Rico is the clear RB2. Even if that happens, and Rico, I got him ranked RB28. He's usually going much later in drafts, so you don't even have to draft him this high. Rico's still one of the best handcuffs, I think, in fantasy football. Unless Caleb Johnson does an Undertaker meme and just really becomes a factor in this, I think Warren and Dowdle both have top 24 upside without an injury. We saw Warren and Gainwell do this last year. On average, we usually get about 2 backfields per year that simultaneously produce top 24 running backs. A lot of them are in situations with an old quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. We had the Drew Brees years as well, where it's just, they're old. Look at them. They're old. They won't get the ball out of their hands fast. Can't blame them. Both these guys, I think in the best case scenario, are weekly low-end RB2s, and God forbid either gets injured, that other guy has sky-high RB1 upside. So kind of like a middle-class man's version of the Jahmyr Gibbs, Dave Montgomery backfields from the last few years. So Rico Dowdle, I don't blame you guys for thinking Jalen Warren's better at football. I think Jalen Warren's better at football. I don't know if Mike McCarthy agrees. And some of the receiving stuff I think has been overstated as well, guys. Both these dudes have played 33 games over the past 2 seasons, and Jalen Warren only has 5 total PPR points more from receiving than Rico Dowdle. So Warren, Dowdle, trying to come away with one Steelers running back in your fantasy draft either way, I do think makes a lot of sense. RB29, Ramondre Stevenson. Already talked about him a lot with TreVeyon Henderson, but yeah, 71% snap rate in the playoffs. That said, the regular season split was a bit closer than I remembered. I just struggle other than with the TreVeyon injury, which to be fair, I brought up for TreVeyon with Ramondre. I struggle to see oh my God, Ramondre just running away with this job. I do think they want to keep it split, and I do think they would like to see TreVeyon being more of a factor in the pass downs. We'll continue to hear about TreVeyon hitting all these wheels in practice. That's a Patriots beat reporter telling us about this. And we had the actual wheel that Ramondre caught in the game that they told us afterwards was supposed to be for TreVeyon, but he had already gotten pulled for pass pro. It was such a strength of TreVeyon's coming out of Ohio State. I know it didn't work last year. I just really have reservations about betting too heavily on Ramondre. But again, 0 RB heroes, guys. I do think Ramondre is going to stay involved enough to be getting that 10 to 15 touches per game, even if TreVeyon starts doing good things. Tough to overly bicker about that when we're getting to this point in the draft. RB30 for me, Chuba Hubbard, just 1 year removed from an RB13 finish. He's going to be splitting with Jonathan Brooks, but you get into these drafts and it's just like everyone is playing chicken, seeing who's going to draft Chuba Hubbard. And I never want to. Chuba Hubbard is like the Cortland Sutton of running backs, where every time I look at my ranks and he's on the board and it says I should draft Chuba, I go to my ranks and I lower Chuba so I don't have to freaking do this. So he is the epitome of an eat your vegetables pick. And guess what? I freaking hate eating vegetables. All right. Will that get me in trouble chasing dessert? Will I regret that in 3 months? Decent chance. All right. I think the hate for Chuba has gone too much. He's an RB13, 2024. Last year had the early season calf injury. Wasn't great to see Rico Dowdle snatch his chain, but they even things out down the stretch. Many, many millions of reasons for the Panthers to continue to entrust Chuba, one of their team leaders, as the RB1. But Jonathan Brooks is coming, and it's just one of these things where not only is Brooks a threat to split, but similar to, Jalen Warren, Rico, Chuba, and Brooks, a takeover could happen. We saw it happen last year. Chuba's not getting any younger. I just really struggle to see, similar to some of these other guys we talked about, oh man, I didn't draft Chuba Hubbard. Now I'm in the losers bracket. Could be wrong. if you're going pure zero RB and you just need running backs to put in there, I get it. I was also in an FFPC draft last week, guys, where straight up Jonathan Brooks went ahead Chuba Hubbard. So again, don't hit the player, hit the ADP. If we are getting to a point where top 50 wide receivers are off the board, top 15 quarterbacks, top 8 tight ends, okay, yeah, give me Chuba Hubbard. But again, personally, just haven't been going out of my way for him to this point. RB31, Tony Pollard, joins Derrick Henry as the only 2 running backs in the NFL with at least 1,000 rushing yards in each of the past 4 seasons. And the last 2 only still produce RB22 and RB30 finishes. So he got going a little bit down the stretch of last season, but we had that weird Titans-Browns blowout. They got to play a Chiefs team without Patrick Mahomes. I'm not really buying it, guys. Pollard's 29. We got Tajay Spears, who was banged up last year. Like, we had Pollard with an 80-90% snap rate for large portions of early last season, and we still couldn't get anything going from the dude. So is Brian Dable going to come in and save things? I don't really think so. His only calling card is like been having his quarterbacks run a ton, which is cool in fantasy, but in real life, they usually get injured, which kind of isn't all that great. So if this team sucks, like we all kind of think they will, why not put Nicholas Singleton out there last month in the season and see what you got? I know a lot of people like Tony Pollard for the volume. We've had the volume and it still hasn't been much upside. I really struggle, which is crazy because Pollard used to be the epitome of someone who could make more with less, but we all get older. With Spears taking the pass down work, I'm just not in on Tony Pollard this year. RB32, last one in this tier, is going to be J.K. Dobbins, who clearly, guys, was the RB1 last season before he got injured. 164 touches compared to 75 for R.J. Harvey during the first 10 weeks of the season. That's what I thought the split was going to look like for TreVeyon and Ramondre when I actually went back and ran the numbers. Hey, and credit to Dobbins, guys. 5 yards per carry, just 3.7 for R.J. Harvey. They re-signed him, not to Saquon money or anything like that, but what was it, 2 years, 20 million, maybe 16, 1 year's guaranteed, more or less. It's the way running back contracts usually work. But I will say, all that dominance in the touch department, still just the RB27 first 10 weeks of last year. Last 3 years, man, we keep chasing those Alvin Kamara, Darren Sproles, kind of Sean Payton, New Orleans running back ghosts, but we haven't seen someone rank higher than 24th since he has been there in Denver. Jonah Coleman, someone who could factor in goal line situations, also pass down situations. I struggle to see the sky-high ceiling for J.K. Dobbins, but you know what? I'm in these 14-team leagues with 3 flexes. I'm in a 32-team fantasy football league, all right? So as much as I feel like I'm criticizing a lot of these running backs now where it's like, oh, well, what is the possibility for them to be this top 10 player? We're only getting 10 top 10 running backs this year, guys. How's that for some analytics? So I don't want to completely, be crapping on Pollard and Dobbins and Chuba Hubbard and these guys, but they're boring, volume-based running backs and offenses that we don't really love for the right build. Maybe that's your cup of tea. Tier 7, ladies and mostly gentlemen, we are now looking at all-star handcuffs and the position's cheapest starters. So RB33, Blake Corum, maybe get more of a 50-50 split, but again, going back to the handcuff idea, really just does have a great case as fantasy's most valuable handcuff. Someone who's close, though, RB34, Kyle Monungai, had that massive game against the Bengals. I kind of get that. I didn't watch Dexter, but you guys have probably seen the meme of that black dude in the car who's just like looking super skeptical. I forget his name. I think he was aware of what Dexter was doing, though. Whenever I'm watching a player and all their top highlights came against the Bengals and the Cowboys last year, I kind of get that skeptical look at it. But Monungai did some good things against the Eagles and stuff later in the year as well. Either way, 13.7 opportunities per game across the final 10 contests. Like Blake Corum, he's a solid flex with benefits player, even if I'm not exactly expecting a takeover from either party. Not so the case with Jonathan Brooks, who again comes in as the RB35. I will say, shout out Dr. Jeff Mueller at JM Thrive PT. I've memorized his handle because I so constantly cite all of his work in podcasts and also articles. So make sure you give him a follow. But he had a really good note about Brooks saying that in his opinion, his medical doctor opinion, Brooks didn't suffer 2 completely separate, devastating ACL tears. The first one wasn't fixed as well as it should have been. And the second one, again, was more so of a setback as opposed to a second complete tear. So plenty of time based on the timetables they have to believe he's going to be back close to 100%. He's still somehow only just 22 years old. Brooks is the rare handcuff running back who could actually take over, okay? Him and Rico Dowdle are 2 of the only guys I think we can kind of realistically say that about. Not that it can or won't happen elsewhere, but just as things stand right here as I record this on July 13th, I think there's a better chance that Brooks overtakes Chuba than Monungai over Swift or Corum over Kyron. Now, on the other side of things, I'm more confident in the weekly role for Monungai and Corum. That's why I have them a spot ahead, but definitely some high upside for Brooks. I just hope he doesn't keep flying up the ranks, guys. Like a month ago, I could sit here and sell you as Brooks as my favorite running back sleeper of the year, but we're getting to the point where he's going to be freaking going ahead of Chuba Hubbard in home leagues potentially. So keep an eye on that price. But again, really like Brooks. Just please, let's maybe keep this one between us and keep it quiet so that ADP doesn't keep on climbing. RB36, Rachaad White, your favorite fantasy nerd's favorite late round running back this year, just because he's kind of got some 2025 Javonte Williams vibes, guys. He is one of only 3 running backs since he entered the league with over 200 catches. The only other guys, Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey. So I don't think he's been amazing, but he wasn't amazing in 2023. Still worked as the RB10 in PPR points per game. RB23 in 2024, even with Bucky Irving ascending and eventually taking that job. So again, wide open Washington backfield. Maybe it is just a mess, but they're all this cheap because it's a mess right now. If we get word that Rachaad White is going to be the clear leader, we get the preseason games and he's playing, 10 of 11 snaps with the first team starters. Like, this is a dude who's going to be going really freaking high, man. I don't think he's going to get like top 16 or anything like that. But like, if we're looking at the tier list, what would really be the difference between like Cam Scatterbo and Rachaad White? Their offenses that we're not overly enthralled with probably have more reason for optimism with the Commanders based on what Daniels did in 2024. Daniels and Dart are running around a lot. Like, we're not expecting oodles of targets. Oodles is a weird word. Work on that one, Ian. I just think Rachaad White, like especially if you're drafting right now, guys, of all these running backs that just based on a little bit of news, a little bit of clarity, who could go flying up the ranks, like Rachaad White definitely stands out as one of them. So on the other side of things, if we hear Bill Krosky-Merritt or Jerome Ford or Jerry McNichols or, Kaytron Allen, shout out Fat Man. If any of these other guys, they get the good words, then okay, Rachaad White's going to drop as well. But we're already on RB36. Like, these are now in the later rounds. These are the sort of running backs I want to be trying to take bets on. And that brings me to the next running back I want to be taking late round bets on, RB37, Jordan Mason. Shout out to Vikings insider Matthew Collar. He actually believes Mason, not Jones, will be leading the way this season. So I know last year wasn't all that pretty, but the Vikings, low-key, guys, tied for the 5th fewest rush attempts inside the 5-yard line. So they were right there with the Jets. Jordan Mason on a hopefully improved Vikings offense will get back to getting that goal line rushing work. Kyler Murray should be helping the rushing lanes overall. We've seen that in history with dual threat quarterbacks. And he's not like the Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, who's a threat at the 1-yard line. So no, we're not going to get the pass catching stuff. I don't think that Jordan Mason's going to turn in, a top 12 season, but Jordan Mason, David Montgomery, but like 30, 40 picks cheaper. Something to think about. RB38, Kenneth Gainwell. Again, reigning Steelers team MVP, Kenneth Gainwell. Going to keep bringing that up every day for the rest of my life. Maybe he does close things up with Bucky Irving. I'm just worried about Sean Tucker being annoyingly involved either way. I could see it being almost like a lesser Buffalo Bills situation, all right? James Cook is Bucky Irving in this scenario. Kenneth Gainwell is Ty Johnson. They're the number 2 running back, but if the starter gets hurt, Ray Davis in Buffalo and then Sean Tucker in Tampa, they actually come up and they get more early down work, and the Kenneth Gainwell, Ty Johnson role really wouldn't change all that much. So threw a lot of names around there. Sorry if I confused you. I like Gainwell. He's someone where I think flex-wise is better than some of these other running backs we're talking about. I just question the best case ceiling. RB40, Jacory Krosky-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill, 12th most rushing yards over expected per carry last year. Shout out Next Gen Stats. Had some good moments, man. Chargers game earlier in the year. Cowboys game when C-Rod got sick at the end. Ball security issues. Seemed like maybe lost his confidence during the middle part of the year. But just the hype was so crazy in August for this dude because we're all weird in fantasy football land and we love finding these late round rookies. He had a really, really freaking good year, guys, for a day 3 rookie. All right. So maybe it didn't meet our ridiculous sky high expectations in fantasy land, but wouldn't completely rule out Bill doing, his thing. He is the most explosive running back in Washington. Even if Rachaad White is a starter and the guy I want to put my chip on mostly because of the pass down work, I do think Bill, if we do see that gap continue to grow, at a minimum, is going to be a nice guy to keep on that bench in his own right. RB41, Aaron Jones, last guy in his tier, kind of already talked about him with Jordan Mason. Could be a trap, though. I was drafting Aaron Jones a little more earlier, and, we're past 40 running backs at this point. I don't want to crap too hard on any of these dudes because they are cheap for a reason, but Damon Claiborne coming in could potentially be more of an explosive pass catcher. Matthew Collar also know they didn't love Aaron Jones' work in pass protection, so could be an issue with him, even being the clear pass down back. Aaron Jones, someone that generally I just think happy to let someone else draft him. Tier 8 at this point, looking at some dogs. Not really at this point. It's tier 8. RB41, RJ Harvey, RB42, Keaton Mitchell, RB43, Woody Marks, Tyrone Tracy, Alvin Kamara, Tajay Spears, Chris Rodriguez, Isaiah Pacheco, Tyler Algier, Tank Bigsby, and Brian Robinson. It is clear number 2 RBs, but we're saying there's a chance. Now, I mentioned we have some nice handcuff upside. So RJ Harvey is the guy who I have, again, very low in this ranks relative to a lot of other people because I just don't really see it, guys. He was good as a receiver, okay. Most of the real goodness, though, that we look back on came against the Bengals and Cowboys. Most of the rushing efficiency stats paint him as a very bad player, which isn't the be-all, end-all, okay? When Quinshon Judkins' efficiency is really bad last year, and so is everyone else on the Browns because it was the freaking Browns, I don't hold that against him. When J.K. Dobbins, who everyone hates, injured, he's old, he's slow, whatever. If he's so bad, and how come RJ Harvey was averaging 1.3 fewer yards per carry in the same offense in a situation where like Harvey should be the guy where defenses are expecting pass when he's in there in the first place? So look, RB8 after the team's week 12 bye when he was the running back left, Dobbins was out of the picture. There is some handcuff upside, but now with Jonah Coleman, man, 220 pounds, he did so many little things right. I made this stat for the draft eligible running backs called the little things: pass pro, ball security, just, drop rate, fumble rate, things like that. Number 1 running back in this class. I'm concerned about Harvey because I think Dobbins is a clear-cut starter here. We're not going to be able to trust Harvey on a week-to-week basis. And now, even if Dobbins does get injured, I'm not convinced we have the same sky-high passing upside. And again, I just feel like more and more we're chasing those Sean Payton, New Orleans ghosts at RB. Haven't quite seen that return in fantasy land in recent years. Keaton Mitchell, Mike McDaniel, the wanted posters in his GM's office. More of a best ball pick for me. I just think we're going to really struggle to ever be too excited about starting Mitchell, even if Aaron Hampton gets hurt too. I'm not going to go through that whole Bills example again, but I do think Kamadi Vidal could be the Ray Davis to Keaton Mitchell's Ty Johnson. RB43, Woody Marks. RB44, Tyrone Tracy. Very similar guys where we're more so drafting them as handcuffs, but hey, maybe the split with the running backs. New situation, new running back, new coaches, at least in the Giants case. Maybe it is more 60-40 as opposed to 70-30. Definitely guys you want on the end of your bench. Alvin Kamara, my most drafted running back in best ball land this offseason at RB45. I just think where he's going, which is like virtually free, pick 180, way too low. A lot of people didn't think he was going to play football this year. The Saints were going to get rid of him. If they do trade him, guys, he's going to be flying up these ranks in a hurry. So I will say Saints offense didn't exactly yield all these, fantasy friendly opportunities last year in their own right. And just the same reason I'm drafting a lot of Jerry Jeudy, which Kamara and Jeudy 2026, I admit, doesn't sound great to say out loud. You look at running backs over these last 2 seasons, guys. There's been 8 running backs have a season with 18 plus PPR points per game over these past 2 years. 7 of those running backs are going among the top 12 running backs. Alvin Kamara goes RB55. RB55 for someone 1 year removed from a top 5 finish at their position. I know Travis Etienne is there now. I'm not saying Kamara's overtaking this backfield. I do think he's a sky-high handcuff because he would take over. I think he could catch 40 or 50 passes if this thing is anywhere close to 50-50, as I do think it has a chance to be. Tajay Spears, similar concerns as like Harvey, where I just don't ever think they're going to turn the backfield over to him, but he can catch passes. Nobody has avoided more tackles per touch than Tajay Spears as he come into the league. Very, very entertaining player, just hasn't had the best will from the injury gods. RB47, Chris Rodriguez, Liam Cohen's boy from Kentucky. Maybe he does fall into the end zone 10 times. Maybe some of the arguments I made about Jordan Mason actually could also apply to Chris Rodriguez. I'm fading this offseason foot injury, though. I think he's an overall relatively mid-talent. RB48, Isaiah Pacheco, the handcuff for Jahmyr Gibbs. There you go. RB49, Tyler Algier. I don't see the huge upside here, guys. I see him regularly listed in the top handcuffs video or top handcuff ranks. I'm going to have a separate video on that later in the week. Make sure you check that out if you want. It's a free country. Even if Jeremiah Love gets injured and he's out of the picture, which is a big if, where are we ranking Tyler Algier? Like RB26 or something like that? Like he's just going to be there, I think, with Judkins and some of these other dead zone running backs. We hate the Cardinals. James Conner, Trey Benson could still factor in. Like Tyler Algier for me is someone I have not been clicking. Really, really struggle to see the upside scenario. Good player. NFL's all-time leader for most career touches without a fumble. PFF's second highest pass blocking grade among running backs last season. I hate the offense, though. You know who I do like as a handcuff running back? Tank Bigsby, baby. My RB50. Dude's good. All these stats that we pretend to care about, yards after contact, tackles avoided, explosive run rate, they all say Biggs has been a top 5 running back over these past 2 years. The man was fun in Jacksonville in 2024. I kind of wish they would have kept him there and given this dude a better chance to do his thing. Of course, no standalone upside here. It's going to be Saquon Barkley's show. If it's not, though, Tank Bigsby on the cover of every single waiver wire article in the industry. Similar sentiment for RB51. Brian Robinson. Fun stat, guys. Yards after contact per carry, I appreciate it, all right? We're trying to quantify what we're seeing with these running backs, but like Devon Achane, TreVeyon Henderson, these are some of the guys in the top 10 because they break an arm tackle at the line of scrimmage, and yeah, they technically rack up 60 yards after contact, but just personally, when I think of the stat, I try to think of like who's pushing piles and stuff. So what I did with it was look at the percentage of carries that each running back had at least 3 yards after contact. The number 1 running back in that last year, Brian Robinson. So again, only a best case handcuff. And we don't love the Falcons offense as much as the Eagles. That's why I do have him one spot below Tank Bigsby. But Brian Robinson, good, solid football player. Last one, guys, tier 9, late round darts. I got RB52, Zach Charbonnet. Not sure when he's going to be back, probably November. RB53, Dylan Sampson. I don't know if he's a cheaper Tajay Spears or just a more expensive Justice Hill. RB54, Jonah Coleman. RB55, Katron Allen. Someone's got to technically lead the Washington Commanders backfield, I think. RB56, Marshawn Lloyd. I cannot quit this dude. Injury history sucks, guys. I get it. But if you do go through them, it's not like we're dealing with, 5 ACL tears in the last 3 years. He hasn't really had a major long-term setback. It's just been one nagging injury after another. But he's healthy right now. LaFleur and the Packers, they continue to believe in him enough to not add like other serious competition. I know Chris Brooks is there as well. It's just crazy to me. Like Josh Jacobs has been falling down the ranks while Lloyd and Brooks stay cheap as ever at the bottom. So I'm throwing late round darts on Marshawn Lloyd. I've done it the last 2 years. They did not work out then. But you know what? America loves a comeback, people. RB57, Mike Washington. This dude is going to be a great handcuff stash in redraft league, guys. If Ashton Genty stays healthy for 17 games, then we're never going to talk about Mike Washington probably once all year. Again, though, the next man up, Dylan Labe, is the only other running back right now that we need to really care about in Las Vegas. More of a special teams, pure pass pro guy. Anyway, absolute freak athlete, Mike Washington. Very, very good, incredibly late round handcuff. RB58, Ray Davis, talked about him a little bit. He did command because we have one game without James Cook over the past 2 seasons. In that game against the Jets, Monday night game, I remember it because I'm freaking pissed because of some of the reporting that went on, but I won't reopen those scabs. Anyway, Ray Davis in that game, 23 of 27 of the backfield carries and targets. Ty Johnson really did not see his role change. That wasn't 2024, though. And this is the only reason why I don't have Ray Davis ranked much, much higher in kind of like that top handcuff tier. We saw a little bit of a difference in 2024 and 2025. There's a lot more Ty Johnson in 2025. The Bills weren't even afraid to use him on short yardage situations. So who do I think is the primary handcuff to James Cook? I think it's Ray Davis, but I really do think it could be a lot closer to a 60-40 situation than what we saw. And again, that one single sample size. RB59, Braylon Allen, RB60, Sean Tucker, and RB61, Jaden Blue. Very important situation in Dallas to try to figure out who this handcuff is going to be. I guess I'll give Blue the benefit of the doubt right now. I don't know why I am. Malik Davis was actually the number 2 down the stretch of last year, and we also had Phil Maffa be banged up, come back late. But I do think just if you had to look at these other running backs and say like who has the most differing, perhaps complementary skill set to Javonte Williams, I do think it's Jaden Blue from that standpoint. So he does, again, have that speed, have that pass catching ability that we saw at Texas, 2 touchdowns against my Ohio State Buckeyes in that awesome college football semifinal game. But it's just a very, very important situation to be monitored. Indianapolis Colts as well. There are a few of these top-ranked running backs with very unclear depth charts. Cowboys want to really keep an eye on. But guys, big one there. Hope you guys keep an eye on these 61 running backs and more videos from the channel as we get into the offseason. Again, kind of got a running back week going on here. Touched on quarterbacks last week, wide receivers, tight ends, and then we'll really, really, really turn up the pure draft content here as we get into August and beyond. So appreciate you guys hanging out. As always, if you like the video, then please like the video. And that subscribe button always helps as well. So again, fun time breaking down the RB tiers. Plenty more goodness on the way. But until then, just have a great rest of your day.